We are here and I am excited. Welcome back to the Pop Podcast by Dr. Teran, where we are here again with Pastor James McCarroll from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Welcome back, Pastor.
Oh, it's so good to be back. Every time's like the first time.
Amen. Feel like I'm at church. I've been going in. All right. Well, again, welcome back, you all, to the Pop Podcast. And we are again, and I always say this because I spend a lot of time making sure we have the best of the best guests, and we are in for another treat. And today we're going to be talking about our ongoing discussion about servant leadership. And even though you may possibly, if you're listening to this for the first time, you're probably saying to yourself, okay, um, how much can we talk about servant leadership? It just goes deeper than you can ever imagine when you really look into it as we speak on breaking it down and diving in a little bit deeper than probably you ever thought of before. So today, the topic is the making sure that we are making it happen. Now, I almost was going back into the place of the ultimate sacrifice because as we were working on this, and we're going to give you guys 10 tips today, as we promised. Uh, I really, and it really just shows, Pastor, where my mind is with this because even as I was thinking about making it happen, I was still thinking about the sacrifice, right? From
Yeah.
the recap from last time. So, again, for those that haven't been listening, if you're just joining us today, we have been having an amazing time. And so, just to recap a little bit, last podcast, last Friday, we were talking about the ultimate sacrifice. And what does that mean when we're talking about servant leadership? What is going on with someone when we are saying they have to be of service? They are leading by serving, and it takes a major sacrifice. And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't get that. They like the idea of servant leadership just in its very general state. And as a lot of people can visualize, when we're talking about even the iceberg, we're barely able to feel the chill on this
Yeah.
because it's so much deeper. Am I right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So, today, I just want to let you guys know we did promise, as I said, 10 tips. We're going to break it down because this is part one of making it happen. And with this, we're going to start off with the first 5 steps that we want you to take when it comes down to how to actually put into action what it means to be a servant leader. And we want you guys to really open your minds and hearts as we delve into this, because again, this is the POP, which stands for the pursuit of peace. And we're taking you through a journey where you're actually able to question yourself. And so,
Yeah.
Pastor and I really studied this immensely and really began to look at what is the biggest takeaway, because we
Mhm.
want you to be able to come away from this saying, not only do I know the basics of servant leadership, not only do I know the depths that it may go, but I know what sacrifice is being shared as, best practice. But at the same time, now I need to be at the place of making it happen, which is why it's called the session today. So, Pastor, one of the things that we worked together on was looking at down the pillars of servant leadership. And that's how we were able to come to our 10 steps that we're going to share. So, the
Yes.
first we're going to talk about is a question. We had a question, and I want the pastor to really lead on delving into this and getting us going. Is we want you to consider these tips in the form of a self check. And I'm always big, as I said before, I'm big on a self check because you have to really realize where your baseline is so that you can know how to build, how to grow, what areas and opportunities you have to enhance your skills and abilities. So, the first question, jumping right in, is who or what does my spending who or what does my spending say holds the more value or the greater value in my life? I'm going to say that again, and then I'm going to want you to take it away, Pastor.
I got
Who or what does my spending say holds the greater value in my life? Where could we be going with that when we're talking about do a self check and servant leader?
So the first thing when we talk about personal character, most times we love to give more grace to ourselves.
Mhm.
In many cases, so that we don't really look at the most candid version of where we are. And so, with that being the case, we wanted to look at personal character and the other value or the other pillar of moral authority. So, in essence, what happens is in this question, you begin to allow not your personal perception, if you will, to be the gauge, but you give stranger feedback privileges to your finances
Mhm.
or to your time, because you can spend money, you can spend time, you can spend energy. And so you allow those things, those objective things, to give you stranger feedback as it pertains to where you really are. Because it's easy to say, hey, I love my family, but then when you look at your budget and you see how much you spent on your family versus how much you spent on yourself or your friends, then it's a different story. Or you may say, hey, I love Jesus. I love worshiping Jesus. But when you look at your time and you ask your time that question, your time gives you a totally different answer. So we wanted to make sure you had a space to, again, give stranger feedback as it pertains to your personal characters, feedback that wouldn't allow there to be a personal bias, if you will, very objective feedback, so that you can look within and say, okay, when it comes to what I really value, Jesus said it best in Matthew 6:24. He said, where a man's treasure is, there his heart is also. And
Mhm.
so when you watch your treasure and watch where your treasure goes, is usually following your heart's truest desire. And so as you talk about really doing the first self-check, it's beginning to say, okay, what is my real value system? So what do I really value in this life? What really holds priority in this life? And there's no greater place to go to find out where your priorities really lie than your pocketbook or your watch or
Right.
even your bodily energy. And so I want to encourage you to hear this question and let it sink in a little bit, because it's really going to speak to your life in a very, very, very powerful way and reveal some things to you that your personal biases or your grace lens, if you will, may not have shown you about who you are and what you really value.
Right. And something that I take away from it when you're talking about a person of character, and I even want to just stay there because it automatically rolls over into moral authority. And when
Mhm.
I say that, when I think of a person of character, if I'm doing a self check, because we don't want to do anything or recommend something that we don't do for ourselves, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And when I was sitting there and I said, okay, I teach about and train about servant leadership, I talk to people about adapting that model. And I said, okay, let me do a self check myself, and if I were to
Mhm.
look at that, it's like, okay, so where my mind goes into, say, for instance, in the workplace, how much money, if I am truly saying that I'm invested in being a
Mhm.
servant leader, how much money have I invested? And when we say investment, we're not just talking about, oh, the $5 that you found in the corner of your pants or something.
Mhm.
When you truly
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
an investment into owning those skills, like how is it that if you don't know that you are capable and you're able and you're like, this sounds interesting.
Mhm.
I want to take on and I want to adopt this style of leadership because it sounds amazing. It sounds like we're getting results regardless.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, how much money are you putting aside
Yes.
to take the trainings to do that? And then even on the home front, if I am being a servant leader in the home,
Yes.
whatever roles you subscribe to in the home, whether you're there by yourself, whether it is that you're there with a partner, with a spouse, regardless of the situation, then the question then begs, okay, well, how much have I put aside into savings
Yeah.
to make sure that I could take ownership of making it about, you know, I value my family, I value our growth. So I want to
Yes.
be able to invest a certain amount of money, even those that are, I'm sure you hear of it of different ministries where it's the singles ministry, for
Yes.
instance. And it's like, okay, if you're going to adopt sort of the traditional beliefs in the church, it's like, okay, well, how much money have you laid up aside for the
Yes.
family that you want? Where does your money say your values lie?
Yeah, it's you're exactly right, Doc. It's asking the question, who else is in my budget? So if I'm seriously a servant leader, then again, we said last week we serve God, or the
Mhm,
weeks past we serve God, we serve our neighbor, and then we serve the audience that God has created us to serve.
mhm,
And so, how many other people are in my budget?
right.
And like yourself, I have to look back at this before we did this and say, okay, let me allow my budget to talk to me. I have
Yeah,
a wonderful app called Mint, and it kind of walks through and categorizes all of your spending. And
yeah,
I was like, okay, if I'm serious about health, what does my budget say based on where I eat,
right.
as far as what that seriousness is? But when it
Mhm,
comes to serving others, really asking the question, who else is in your budget?
yeah.
If they're not in your
Your wallet.
budget, there's a good case they may be on good. There may be a good chance that they're on your agenda,
Yeah,
but they're really not in your heart.
right, right.
That's a whole. Your
And
investment. Your investment speaks to your. To,
absolutely. And when you
your
talk
values.
about values, because that's what we're talking about when we're
Mhm,
saying it covers people of character. And you
mhm,
having character, it's not just saying you have a character. You
mhm,
have the character that
mhm.
allows you to think beyond yourself. It
Yes.
even actually, and I don't think that we identified this, but in some degree, it actually has a little bit of foresight in there.
Mm, mm.
Because if you are making sure and just assessing where does your spending say that your values lie, and where is that greater amount going to, it's where's the planning of it, because
Yes.
we don't just, and we shouldn't, I should say, we shouldn't just get money and that's it. We should
Yes.
have a plan, like a game plan of
Mhm.
what we're going to do with this money. Otherwise we can be living out in Santa Monica somewhere,
Yes.
the
Well,
beach.
not us. Santa Monica's too far. Maybe like Charleston or somewhere,
Uh-huh.
Hilton
Well,
Head or something.
like just
But
in the general, in
yeah.
the general concept, you're a mess. Like we're gonna have fun tonight. I already feel it. But when we're just thinking, okay, we have money, and what are we
Yes.
doing with it? Are we using it to invest into, like I said, whether it's leadership skills, whether it's
Mhm.
something for the family, whether it's a family trip? That's an investment on just the quality of life, if that's something
Yes.
that's included in that. Of you want to travel, okay, well, what are you putting aside? But then on the other end, the question is, well, is your money showing you that you're actually more self-centered than you thought?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And
You
so,
know?
I agree. It's this concept of personal character is
Mhm.
huge in servant leadership because it all boils down to, and I think Greenleaf says it, making a servant into a leader or giving a servant a leadership posture or position. And it really goes back to this question of how serious is servanthood, or how serious is servanthood, or how much am I really being committed to serving others?
Mhm. Yeah.
And again, it looks one way on paper, but when you talk about how you strategize or how you plan or how you prioritize your spending,
Mhm.
that speaks much more loudly. And
Absolutely.
so again, this is a sobering space because it, again, points back, as you said, to the moral authority.
Yeah.
What is the governing moral authority in your heart?
Yeah.
So if you're okay with spending on yourself alone, then what voice is guiding the morals by which you live?
Yeah.
So all of this is kind of wrapped up. And like you said, it's having enough time, and these questions are to make all of us dig, of course,
Mhm.
so that we move from this space of self-centeredness to other-centeredness and guide ourselves into a space of servanthood. So I think the follow-up question, Doc, would be then, how does my budget need to change?
Right. Right. And I'm so glad you said that, because it just was almost like a light just went off when it was okay. So you're in this self check. Okay. We're talking about making it happen. But once you realize, okay, you've asked yourself the question and you've answered it, whether you're on one side or the other. And so then it's okay. So now I know that, for example, if you are possibly on the side of, oh, like, I'm not so much on this otherness side. I'm not on this side where I'm basically on the side where I am self-centered, to just be very plain.
Yeah.
You know, you are self-centered. And it's okay, because acknowledging it is, as we know, the first step, right? So it's like, okay, now that you know, what are you going to do about it? So
Yeah.
now that you know, what are some of the basic things that you can do? I mean, something that comes to mind really off the top of my head as I think about it is, this is, if there's never been any other time, the the pandemic that we're going through right now is an absolute perfect time to think of giving. There's so many people in need. I know of someone very close. She is amazing, and I'm going to make her watch this if she's not watching it now, just so I can let her know I did brag on you. I just love sometimes when I'm connecting with her and she's like, oh, let me call you maybe like a half hour. My neighbors need help with their groceries, like bringing in their groceries. You know, like, it may not be all about the monetary money.
Yes.
It's about the value, what are your things that are valuable to you? And money should not be what's most valuable to you. It should not be your only currency, the dollar bill.
Yes.
But what is it that you can give as a sacrifice?
Yeah.
What can
But
you sacrifice, even if it's just your time,
yes.
right?
Yeah. So one of the things we do on the Wednesday night check-ins
Mhm.
is, the first question we ask is, what do you have to show heaven as a return on investment for the new mercies you were given?
Yes.
So if you're serious about serving, at the end of your day, you should check the ledger, if you will, of the
Mhm.
day, and really ask, how much of my day did I spend serving others? And
Yes.
it's so sobering,
Yeah.
because then you really ask the question after that: is servanthood part of my real character?
Right.
Is it who I am? And
And
not that we don't want to earn servanthood, if you will, but it's a way to gauge it and to be
yeah.
able to say, okay, hey, let's consider this. So Doc, I think it was a strong question. You made it up, so thank you. So
I think
brilliant.
we worked on it
Uh,
together. We were like rapid fire, like ideas and brainstorming. So it all works out in the end. And again, this is just question one. So we're just getting the night started with a very powerful and in-depth question. Again, we want to urge you through encouragement and love to say, really, what is going on with me? Really, what is going on that I put most value in? And again, reminding yourself it's not the dollar bill that we're
yes.
talking about. We're also just talking about the things that are most valuable to you. Where is that going? What is the direction that it's flowing in? You know, I even think of when people have so many different reasons for why they won't tithe. It's just
Hmm.
a question of, really, what do you place your value on? You know, what are you investing in? Okay, you have trouble with tithing because, I've heard before, oh, I don't know where it's going. Okay, well, you don't know. Let's bring up those red bottoms. You don't
Yeah.
know where that money is going either, and you don't even question it. It's just, this is that. And what's
Yeah.
crazy is it's not even that powerful of an investment as
Yes.
tides. So it's like, think about that. And really, I'm really big on introspection. And it's really just take that moment, take that time with yourself and just say,
Yes.
you know what? I'm just going to shut everything down. I don't have to do anything in particular, but think within. What is going on with me? Who and what is
Mhm.
going on with what I'm spending? What am I spending my time on? What am I spending my money on? What am I spending my where am I putting even my gifts? You may
Mm.
have a gift for singing. You may have different things that you come up with. I want you guys to really marinate on this with us so that you can really get the full concept of it. And going into question two, and this is a good one. When when I when I hear, I'm sorry, that was a When I hear moral compass, what
Mm.
comes to mind? Pastor, let me actually ask you that. When you hear of moral compass, what comes to mind for you?
So there are two images. One is an image of a compass, of course, with a North Star.
Mm,
So that being the primary gauge that levels or calibrates the entire compass. And so the first thing that I think of is, what is the North Star?
yeah.
And that North Star is the Lord Jesus Christ, like off the rip,
Mhm. Yeah.
hands down.
Right.
It's a life that's committed to God, the will of God, the plan of God, the love of God. So that sets the North Star, and everything in my world is gauged by whether or not it's in alignment with that. Now,
Hmm.
not that we're going to be perfect like Jesus was
Yeah.
perfect, but there were models of love, and there were models of worship, and there were models of self-sacrifice, and models of servant leadership
Yep.
that helped to become a gauge and a level or a plumb line, if you will. So that's the first thing I think of is, okay, moral compass. I think about that. Then secondly, I think about major influencers like Dr. King. I know he's
Mhm.
like the main guy, but
Yeah.
Dr. King, or even people like a Barack Obama, or people that followed what they believed was the best version of their calling as it pertains to how God had called them to serve.
Yeah.
And we're bold. We're bold in that regard. A Harriet Tubman, or um, uh, person like an FDR,
Hmm.
major figures in our society that saw this opportunity and went after it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what sticks out to me is, number one, Jesus, and then secondly, those that said, you know what, I'm going to follow this model God has given me through Christ, and I'm going to let it guide my life into my own purpose. So
Hmm.
that's kind of what I think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like that because a lot of people, at least when I've been in my therapy practice, when I try to describe it, some people know, like you said, like the North Star, I refer to that. Then some even talking, I begin to more regularly refer to, where's your anchor? Who's your anchor? You know,
Mm,
where do you come to feel is your baseline, where you find peace, where you find a centeredness to be able to answer some of the hard questions. You know, a lot of people, regardless again of their spiritual beliefs, backgrounds, religions, they get to a place where it's just in us, it's a part of us.
yeah,
To
yeah,
when things are going wrong, we need to, however we do it, come to a solid ground. We need to ground ourselves. And wherever we ground ourselves, where we are spiritually in that moment, is usually that place of looking for that moral compass. How do we answer the tough questions? How do we decide, you know, what we're going to do in very intense situations, right? And so I like when you were just talking about being very sure. And we're not here to like really put anybody in any particular place. But again, when we were talking about making it happen, I would want to even challenge people to say, okay, so you know what a moral compass is now. Got it. So what now? Or, man, I've been living my whole life and I still don't have a place where I really spend time knowing what that moral compass is. I sort of just sift through whatever seems right in the moment, as
yeah,
opposed to really getting down and serious with yourself. Again, we keep talking about you need to know yourself, because when we're talking about a moral authority, because this is the one that it refers to a lot, right? We are looking at, okay, well, if the wind blows, which way will you go?
mm,
And if it's whichever way the wind is blowing, then you know that
yeah,
pretty much tells you you don't really have an identified almost relationship or clarity, point of clarity with a moral compass. It is, you know, whether it's God, whether it's like you said, whatever people are believing in, but who do you go to
yes,
center yourself? Who do you go to? Because it's hard for you to lead anything or anybody if you don't know what ground zero is for you.
yes.
And it's troubling to know that people go there. But I want you just for a second to not only tie in the concepts that we're thinking of and speaking of in regards to moral compass, but let's go back just a second to when you were talking about your Wednesday nights
Mhm.
and talking about your return on investment. And when we're talking about a moral compass and challenging people to basically like fluff it up, what are we doing here? Dust off anything, just really get to a place of where you are and you're actually saying, well, what is my return on investment? What are some of the things that you talk about in your Wednesday night check-in?
So the biggest thing on Wednesday evenings is to really help people, like you said, to use your word, become introspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything is centered around this concept of my life shouldn't just be lived haphazardly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm brought into this earth, I'm sent into this earth by God to fulfill a purpose and an assignment.
Mm-hmm.
But that assignment is only fulfilled as I have a series of disciplines around me and within me. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's more than just, hey, let me wake up in the morning and see what this day brings. It's creating these areas of boundaries and these areas of discernment and these practices that can be brought alongside you in the day and be transformative and adopted into your heart so that now you don't just see through the same old lens of let me just do whatever, but you see through a very strategic lens, a very planned lens, a very structured lens that will
Mm-hmm.
make you more productive. And so going back to the moral compass piece, it's always the productivity is the compass, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this concept that God did not make me to be fruitless.
Yeah.
God made me to produce fruit. Jesus said, and this is the Father glorified, that you bring forth much fruit. And
Right.
so it's making sure that you always realize, or that we always realize, that our lives should be producing something. The gifts we have, the skills we have, the money we have, the time we have, the
Mm-hmm.
energy we have is there for a purpose. And that purpose is to produce something for the kingdom of God, and something that will impact the world for the Lord Jesus Christ. And
Yes.
so, as part of that, we just go through a series of questions
Yeah.
that tackle different areas, whether it's emotional health, whether it's relationship health, whether it's financial accountability, and just giving people a chance to look within, become introspective, and build some new barriers or some new, excuse me, some new disciplines in those areas that will make them optimize their productivity. And so that's kind of how we handle that moral compass piece to say, okay, here's the moral compass. Moral compass is God saved you and has awakened you every morning to be productive. That's the North Star. So as you hear the conversation, you determine either whether you're on track and on course or whether you're off course and you need to make small adjustments to be more in alignment with what you were called to do and become.
I really like that. Something that comes to mind as you were speaking was looking at, okay, you have to work on this and you do this every Wednesday, correct?
Yes. Hmm.
And one thing that I know about habits is that it takes a little while.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest, I get really a heaviness, I think is the only way that I could describe it.
Hmm.
When I think about even what we're doing here with sharing with people how to adopt, a character, how to
Yes.
adopt a moral authority. Like you said, how to look within to really see how can I really make an investment in my relationship with God, but my purpose and what it is that He would have me to do. And I began to think, hmm, people may believe that just because you attend one Wednesday check in, they listen to one podcast, they listen to one inspirational message, they listen, they sort of, even especially during this time, they sort of church hop from
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
the inside ministries.
Yeah.
We could see. Um, But it takes time. It takes a lot of time for people to build a habit, and they don't know that. Like you may experience it from, okay,
Yeah.
I'm starting a new workout or I'm starting a new meal plan, and it takes a while, and you have those temptations to go back to your baseline. And
Yeah.
even though my mind is going what seems to be like off track a little bit,
Mhm.
I someone is listening to this or watching us and they're in this space of, okay, I'm really feeling motivated to move forward. Guess what? it's not just going to take this in the moment motivation.
Yes.
It takes hard work. It takes hard work. It takes time. Talk about an investment. It takes time to
Yes.
sit and study the word of God. It takes time to study, a new vocation, to study, okay, I want to be a servant leader. And these are all the
Yes.
reasons why. I heard it on this podcast. And also I read this book, da 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 da. But it takes time. And I think I had did a message on this where it takes about, I think it said 9 weeks or more. Yeah, 9 weeks or more, because in my head, okay, that's basically almost 3 months of consistently doing something in order to create a habit. And
Yes.
I just want to put that out there, because when it's all said and done, you can't just pick it up and drop it off. Take your little bite. This is not Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, where you get your little sample and you keep it moving and you don't have to invest in the actual product. You actually have to
Yeah.
invest in this. You actually have
Yeah.
to take the time to do it.
Yeah. And you're right. It's 67 days normally, between 62 and 67 to build a habit, like you said. And I would love you to, because you're so gifted and so brilliant, if you could just share with them how the brain creates a habit, just so we're clear. So the brain doesn't create habits from watching one podcast. Could you talk about that?
No, no.
It's so
And I'm
deep. I
gonna
want you to hear this.
listen, and I'm gonna say it really plain so that people can understand this, because it's the same thing when we're talking about people that work with, as I was speaking to you earlier in regards to addiction,
Mhm.
getting out of that habit where you're actually progressing through recovery. Now, this is, and I'm going to say it again in the most simplest terms ever. So when you do something, that's just it. You do it. It's just as if something is going in one ear and out the other. But when you are doing it consistently, you're actually building mental muscle memory, where your body is at the point where your brain is at the point where it is recalling what you did before. So for instance, I know that we discovered that there's the Groundhog Day movie. So think of that in the sense of something repeating over and over and over and over again, to the point where now you realize, this is how your brain is. Your brain then realizes this is something to do. It then is building synapses to actually create the pattern to shortcut it, so it doesn't have to do it so quickly. So basically, it's just as if you have it, I'll take it even simpler, brushing your teeth. When you were younger, and I'm saying I'm 2-year-old, I'm teaching how to brush his teeth. He has to do it consistently. We even have to do the song. And until he has his brain consistently seeing the same thing, he's hearing the same thing, he's doing the same thing, your brain just thinks it's something to deposit. You have too much going on in your head. There's too much stimuli in the world for you to just stop and say, oh, I'm going to remember that. But what happens is, unless it's something that is impactful, your brain doesn't pick it up. Just like most of what we pick up is things that are negative, things that are uh, maybe impinging on our safety, because it's something that shocked the brain. And so a lot of times our brain isn't being shocked by a concept. It's just not. So, in order for your brain to say, okay, well, it is worth our time to short circuit this and make it a quick to do, you have to consistently do it over and over again, so that then the brain has all these memories, all these synapses doing the same thing. And it say, okay, let's just make a permanent pattern. This is the pattern now, because this is what I'm going to do to shortcut, because we have so many other things to worry about. Your brain is like, really, God made us geniuses. Okay, our brain automatically connects what is consistent so that it's a shortcut to do it. Just like when we talk about mindfulness. When we're talking about mindfulness and you're teaching yourself to breathe, guess what? Your body responds. If you even consistently sit in the same position when you're doing mindfulness, your body only needs to get in that position. It already knows it's time to chill out.
Yes.
Okay. So that's generally speaking what's going on. If you're going to build that habit, it has to be something happening consistently. Once it is done consistently, and like we've been saying, it takes generally from 2 to 3 months, we'll say around there, depending on the person, depending on what's going on, because different people have different issues. We want to recognize people that have trauma issues. I've worked for years with people that have PTSD, people that had traumatic brain injuries as a result of PTSD, the incident. That was the traumatic incident. So when it comes down to it, you have to be consistent. The more consistent you are, the more the brain is like, oh, okay, this is what this person does. So now I'm going to just do it automatically when they start on those synapses that was like, okay, this is what they're doing. Okay. So just imagine it like that. And when it's all said and done, everything that we are talking about, everything that we're discussing, even with the Wednesday night, to your viewers, people that come and listen in and check in with you on the Wednesday nights, even your Sunday broadcast, whatever it is, people have to know you have to sit still, sit
Yeah.
still and be consistent. If you want to learn and reap the benefits of whatever is being discussed, that's where it is. The reason why people end up out of the space of peace, out of character, out of moral compass, like that space, no matter how much they want to, they don't sacrifice time and the commitment
Mm,
to
mm,
discipline themselves long enough for the brain to also say, this is that. Because otherwise,
mm.
it's like, okay, and
That's such a strong point
yeah,
because it says to us that our brain will take its cues from what our character tells it is important.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so if you walk by a store and you see shoes on sale and you can keep walking without it affecting you, then your character has told your brain this doesn't rank that high of a priority. But
Yes.
if you walk by that same store and you say, I got to go in here at least 2 minutes, then it may be an indication that your character has told your brain to make this a priority. And here's the coolest part. Whatever your brain says is important, it will convince your pocket to follow.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so it's so heavy. So you're literally hardwiring your character, and
This is
your brain picks
why.
up on it and says, okay, if this is who they are,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we're going to just follow basically who they told us they are.
Right.
And
We are
that's, oh
creatures
man, that's
of
so powerful.
habit. We are creatures of habit. People keep forgetting that. How, like, if we were to go back into the day when we were like super, like, barbaric, like civilization wasn't even fully developed, we were, even though our brains had the capacity, we relied and we still rely on, that's it.
Yeah.
Because our brains our brains know comfort in that. If you don't, it's actually called, and I'm going to throw one at you, and I know you're going to write this down if you don't already know about it. Neuroplasticity.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So when you put two and two together with neuroplasticity and what we're talking about as far as adopting this new leadership style and breaking it down into the buildup, the building blocks are basically, one and the same with the 7 pillars of leadership, right?
Mhm.
So when you realize that your brain can not only work off a habit, but it can grow based on what you tell it to grow to. New information. That's why they say reading is fundamental. They didn't tell you why. Because
Yeah.
it expands, it gives your brain more space, which is really, when it's all said and done, it's the neurons, it's the growth, it's the expansion, it's your ability to think outside the box, it's your ability to be creative, it's literally your ability to evolve, because
This
we are creatures of habit. If
this
you
is
don't
so
make
heavy.
it grow, it won't grow. You're going to be stuck, you're going to be frustrated, and that's why you're not going to have peace in your life.
Whoever's watching this, you need to share this. You need to write down like 3 people or 30 people to share this with. It will radically, what you just heard will radically change their lives. Radically. When you look at guys that are at the top 5%
Mhm.
of their field, this is all they did.
Yeah.
And their brains literally started adjusting themselves to develop new connections, new neural connections that would enhance their performance in a given area.
Mhm.
And so it's so heavy. I'm just trying to I'm gonna translate it like this. It's so heavy. This is the most off the chain broadcast and deep
Yes.
broadcast that we've had today.
Yes.
But like when I tell you, like, this is so major, and this is, we got 3 more questions tonight. I don't even know if we're gonna get to them, but listen, this is what she just dropped is so major. You need to stop the video right now if you're watching the replay and go back and hear it again.
Yeah.
If you can grasp that one principle, it can change every facet of
Yes.
your life in 60 to 70 days. That's all I have to say. I just had to put that plug
Yeah,
in. I'm sorry.
because when it's all said and done, and I want you, and I know this actually goes into our next question. We can close with this one because it
Okay.
actually goes into, and I'm just going to say the question real quick and then jump back to where we were, because the next question for you all were, are there any subtle differences between your values and your beliefs and your behaviors? What's the difference between basically what you say and what you do? And you
You're
have to
so
go back
mean
to
every night. Last 2 weeks. What's up with this? What's up with this?
I mean, go back to it when you say, okay, you all, everyone, and I'm saying you all because it is every person that is like at the sound of my voice, literally, you are a genius. You just have to tap into your genius zone. If you don't tap into your genius zone, how are you going to adapt new habits, new leadership skills, new leadership mind? You work on mindfulness, right, Pastor?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's part of the morning walk every morning is an exercise in mindfulness.
Yes.
It's I don't I walk, it benefits my body, but the walking is to reconnect and become sensitive to the world around me and
Mm-hmm.
to remind me that my living isn't in isolation. My life affects everything around me, and
Yeah.
I'm affected by everything around me.
Right.
But getting back to this point of just the duality between my values and my behaviors, and
Mhm.
kind of, are they the same thing? Are my values and my behaviors in alignment, or are they, is there some point of differentiation, or some point um, of misalignment? It's so huge because it goes back to the moral compass piece.
Mhm.
And so, but the good news is this, and I love using the language moral compass because I think about like the maritime experience, the sea experience. Those individuals that are in the sea, they depend on a compass. Like
Yes. Oh,
it's the main tool they have. But here's the thing: if they're not heading in the right direction, they don't cancel the trip.
no.
They just say, okay, we need to change the direction of the rudder so that we align ourselves. And I think that moral compass piece is so huge because you can't even have the values versus behavior conversation if you don't know what the compass is. But once you get that compass and you say, okay, my values are heading this direction, but my behavior is heading this direction, it's not a time to beat yourself up. It's
No.
not a time for you to say, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, or I don't get anything right. It's not that moment. It's the moment to say, okay, how do I need to change the rudder? And the rudder is the pattern of behavior that will eventually guide me back into alignment with the compass's direction and the compass's uh, north,
Yeah.
true north.
Right. Right.
So that's all we're talking about. And so that's why I said it's been so rich, because the game plan, the strategy was literally laid out from a very anatomical and physiological perspective. She's so heavy, y'all. I'm telling
It
y'all, she's the real
is.
deal. So like when you think about that, it's literally saying that if I'm heading in the wrong direction, I have been given by God the internal mechanisms to get me not only heading in the right direction, but to hardwire myself to go
Yeah.
in the right direction. That's crazy. Like,
You say this though, to
that's,
add to what you're saying though, people won't know that that synapse is being sparked if they don't listen to it. If
yeah,
they don't know, by practicing introspection, by having a very consistent practice where you zone into your moral compass, you
yes,
won't know. But other people, they may know, but it's just in hindsight. Oh,
hmm hmm
I had a gut feeling. What you mean? Oh, my spirit just wasn't right.
mm,
What do you mean? It's like when it's all said and done, it's like you have to know yourself so that you
yes,
can know not only the depths of where you can go, but also the shallow water. You
yes,
need to know where you need to go deeper. Just like you said, it's not the time to beat up on yourself. If you are not the skilled communicator, if you know that more often than not, what you believe, what you say you know and you have isn't what you actually deliver, it's okay. Recognizing it is the first thing.
yes,
The next step is to do something about it. And
yes,
when we're talking about, well, what can you do about it, when we're, and even just to encapsulate these three: the person of character, moral authority, and skilled communicator, right?
mhm,
If you say, okay, I do need to get better with my communication, I've heard that before, or I felt that before, or I'm always getting into some situation with somebody, it's like,
mhm,
take notice to it. It's not always the other person. And even if it is, you played a part in that two-way conversation as well, right?
yes,
So it's
yes,
like, don't beat yourself up. Something that I love as well about mindfulness, and I really love the fact that you practice mindfulness, and I can speak to you plain. One thing about mindfulness that I love is the love and kindness mindfulness exercise, because when it comes down to mindfulness, it's really about just be okay with where you are. Recognize
yes,
it. That's like the first step. Just recognize it. Don't own it if it's not meant to be owned. If it is meant to be owned, okay, then do something about it. You don't
yes,
just sit there and toil over it. Again, this is the Pursuit of Peace podcast. We're
yes,
getting to the place where you can really begin to dissect where you are and where you can be growing into. And I'll say where you grow into. And even with the bounce forward, we're not talking about even people, when people say resilience, they think of a bounce back.
mhm,
It's like I'm
mhm,
trying to get people to, and that's another thing too. Be careful of what you let in, because you can be
mm,
telling yourself the whole wrong story. You hear so much in pop culture, on TV and things like that, but when you're talking about being a skilled communicator, a person of character, someone that leads with the moral authority, you need to go to that moral authority to know whether or not you need to step into that store and buy those shoes,
yes,
or go
yes,
ahead down to the mission and donate that money to somebody's soup kitchen,
yes.
for example.
But that goes back to how you identify the the North Star.
Yeah.
And so many of us don't realize that the more you give something time in your life, the more it has a chance to become your North Star.
Yes.
So if you're watching a bunch of reality shows, for an instance, and you're seeing the drama there, over time your brain begins to say, okay, maybe this is the North Star. If you're spending your time in the Word of God, then the biblical models and biblical principles become your North Star. Whatever
Hmm.
you give time and fellowship and energy to, and you give access to your heart,
Yeah.
will eventually become your North Star.
Yeah.
And so you want to be very careful with that. And the best way to identify, and if you're saying, okay, well, I want to identify a mentor. So in a certain area you want to develop a North Star there, the
Yeah.
best thing to do is really ask the question about the fruit that's birthed from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so before you identify and adopt a North Star, you want to say, okay, what does the end game look like?
Hmm.
What's
Yeah.
actually being produced from that? Because again, the goal is to be productive. The goal is to be productive in a way that's godly and honoring God and serving others. So
Hmm.
you want to really ask, does their end game honor God?
Yeah.
Does it serve others? And is it productive in a way that is in alignment with their God given purpose?
Right.
And because eventually, whatever you make your North Star will be the forecast of your personal production.
Yeah.
Let me say
Yeah.
that again. Whatever you make your North Star will be the forecast of your personal production. So you're going to end up producing what they produce in essence.
Yeah.
And
And that
so, yeah,
goes back to exactly that question. And I like that you repeated it. Y'all need to do the playback if you missed it, because he said it twice. But when it comes down, when it comes down to the difference between what you say and what you do, that's where that is. Because if you aren't connecting or showing what you feel, or maybe you've at some point said, yeah, this is my North Star, oh, for example, oh, I'm a Christian and this is what I believe in. Okay, but if you aren't living the Christian life and walking and talking as Christ like, then you have to then ask yourself, is that one, the moral compass that you are subscribing to?
mhm, mhm,
Two, well, there's a couple things, but two being, okay, well, if I'm not there and if my behaviors aren't an example of that life and what I'm saying is my moral compass, then I need to, again, go back to the cross, basically, and really just
yeah,
lay it down and figure out, okay, so where am I? How do I strip my needs and that self-centeredness away so that I can be more readily available when I am
mm,
being led? Because just because you have that compass and you have access to it, doesn't mean that you look at it. Doesn't mean
yeah,
that you use it and allow it to guide you. Like you said, you can be out there in the deep and not look at the compass and just be wandering.
mm,
And that's not where we're wanting you to be. As the pastor said, you are telling people, okay, get in the boat with the purpose,
yes,
so that your moral compass can guide you to that.
yeah,
Don't just be frivolent with your time. Just don't live to exist and that's it. You have to live a life that's on purpose. And
yes,
something that came up when you were talking also was just, when it's all said and done, these self checks are also daily.
yes,
Every day you need to spend time with yourself and with your moral compass. And for us, it's God. That's the
yes,
moral compass. That's who we go to every day. And again, it's not just about, oh, I'm upset and I know if I pray about it, it's like it's becoming this thing about, well, pray about it. Oh, no, it's really the relationship,
yes,
to where every day you are connecting and allowing your moral compass, that you're allowing God to really
yeah,
lead you. And
absolutely.
that to me is even the servitude in that. And I know that we're coming short on time, but there's a servitude even in leading a moral compass, because you can
Yes,
still lead and again have it in your pocket for when you need it, as
yes,
opposed to, again, when you get up in the morning, you go to your moral compass to say, well, for us it's like, Lord, what will you have me to do today?
yes,
What you want me to do, and living on purpose. And that's what it's
yes,
about. And something that I wanted to say, I always try to really bring it together for people. We covered, and I want to just encapsulate this again. As we're on this self check, and we do have 10 total, even though we didn't get to 10. We have 10
we're
total.
getting there. We're
We
getting there.
have
We're
10
getting there.
total. But I'm going to give you guys the notes on the top three that we discussed today. The question for your self check is, who or what does my spending say holds the greater value in my life?
Mm,
And that is addressing being a person of character, leading with the moral authority, and putting people first. The second one is, when I hear moral compass, what comes to mind? And that's really just having you have that inner dialogue. Again, we've been speaking a lot about introspection. That's where you have introspection with yourself, just a reality check to say, well, what is and who is my moral authority? Who do I go to be centered and know that
mm,
I am leading from my true north? of who I am truly, and it is what I do and what I live out. And that goes into the third one, which is the component of servant leadership of being a skilled communicator. And the question to ask yourself there is, are there any subtle differences between your values and your beliefs, or even sort of like your underlining beliefs and your behaviors? Is there a difference between what you say and what you do? You know, that all comes together all in one. And it's just really, to me, now that I'm thinking about it, Pastor, it's like these pillars are really just digging deeper into someone that truly is a person of character. And what does that mean? So many people say that, but they don't
Yeah.
necessarily know what that means. So
Yeah.
between now and the next time, I want you to share something for people to think about before we end today.
I'll go back to a statement made earlier that Greenleaf says in his book, The Servant Leadership. He says, what you want to do is find a servant
Mm,
and make them a leader. So the question I have for you is, if there was a promotion with your name on it,
mhm.
what type of person would they be making a leader?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
ask, which type of person would God hope they're making a leader? Which
Mhm,
type of person would your peers hope they were making a leader? And
mhm.
which type of person would the audience that's waiting on God to move in their lives hope that they were making a leader?
Yeah, I like that. And I was at first going to find a nice little thrifty quote out of the book, but my mind said, you know what? What came to my mind is, if tomorrow was promised, what would you want people to say about you? Just think about it and live each day purposely trying to make sure that's what people can say is who you are,
Mm,
regardless of if it's the servant leadership style, regardless of if it's a person that is selfless. And you know how they get on the news and it's like they're talking about the person, oh, they were the greatest person, they were whatever the situation is. If
yeah.
that was the case, envision that, if someone got on the news to broadcast to the world who you were,
Mm, mm.
what would they say? So think of that. We will be back next Friday. Again, we'll be live with YouTube. Next Friday, I'm most likely going to be broadcasting live from Cleveland, Ohio. You never know. I'm here in LA right now, but we will be again with Pastor McCarroll of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And just again, Pastor, please tell them again, if they haven't seen the other episodes, how could they get in touch with you if they need to?
So there are a couple of ways. One, you can reach out to me via Facebook through DMing me there. JamesMcCarroll.org is the website. I encourage you to go on, check it out. You can leave messages there as well. And then finally, of course, I'm on Instagram at Pastor JMC, JMac, on Instagram, so you can DM me there as well. So either one of those mechanisms works. I would love, love, love to hear from you, and look forward to being able to connect with you personally.
Great, great. And I know that before we broadcast again, you'll have another Wednesday check-in, right? How do they find
Yes.
your check-ins?
So the Wednesday night check-ins are on Facebook Live for now. We'll switch that up in August. But for now, we're on Facebook Live every Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m. on the dot. And we go for 15 minutes. So 8:30 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. Every Wednesday night on Facebook Live.
Well, y'all better be on time. Jump on in there, get that check-in, and remember, build that habit or it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. You make the choice. So if you have any questions, you want to reach me, or even if you're wanting to be a guest on the Pop Podcast by Dr. Teran, you can send me an email or actually get connected with me on my website. It gets to me quicker, www.officialspconsultinggroup.com. Again, you guys take care.